Hi, I'm Mike Maloney, and welcome to another CSRM podcast. Today's episode is hosted by Dr. Greg Linville.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another special CSRM podcast. We're entitling this today, Reach Reflections. And my name is Dan Stoffer. I'm joined with Dr. Greg Linville of CSRM, and we have two very special guests here today. We have Tim Conrad and Bob Schindler as well. Those may or may not be names that you have heard of if you're a part of the sports ministry movement, and very specifically with Reach. If you're brand new to this movement, we're going to put these guys on the spot right now. And so, Bob, I'm going to start with you. Tell us who you are, your connection in ministry, and very specifically your connection with the Reach Gathering before we dive in here. So, Bob, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I work for a ministry called Seed Sports, which has been around for 26 years. We focus on two things. We focus on sports chaplains and local churches, and we help both of them, what we say, become all that God intends them to be in the story of the gospel. We want to mobilize churches and sports chaplains to use the what we would call the laboratory and the bridge of sports to extend the kingdom of God. And so my particular role is I'm the COO of that organization that Bob Dyer founded in 1996. I've been with them since 2003. And I think I met Greg pretty quickly after that. It might have been as early as 2004 in Atlanta. And Tim, I couldn't remember when we first met, but I think it was within those first couple of years as well. So yeah. I've known both of these other men for a long time. And honestly, through Reach, these guys have become some of my closest colleagues and friends. And that's one of the real benefits that I've personally experienced through Reach as we wrestled with starting this thing back, first talking about it about 10 years ago, and then actually having our first Reach in 2014. So it's been an honor to know them and to serve with them over these last 10 years at least, but even before that in the sport movement as well. So thanks again for having me on. I'm excited to talk about how God's been at work through this thing called Reach.
Awesome, Bob. Bob, can you give us the web address for Seed Sports so people can look you up in your organization?
Sure, it's very easy. Seedsports.org, CEDESPORTS.org. And people ask me at times, what does seed mean? They think it's an acronym. It's not an acronym. It's a word. It actually means to yield or submit. And it reflects our heart to yield to local church leaders and to sports chaplains to mobilize and equip them to do what God's called them to do. So, but thanks for asking, Dan.
Awesome. And then we're also joined today with Tim Conrad. Tim, tell us about who you are and Uncharted Waters, and also your connection as we reflect upon the Reach Gathering.
Yeah, absolutely. I live in South Carolina. I've sort of moved across the country. I was originally doing sports ministry in Southern California, and then moved to Colorado and did it from the middle of the country. Now I'm doing it from South Carolina. I think my next stop is either the Atlantic Ocean or Africa. I'm not quite sure where I'll end up, but moving east, maybe the east is a good place, I guess. And so that movement, though, Uncharted Waters, was birthed really sort of in Colorado in that middle section. And then I was a part of before starting a group called Missionary Athletes International as well, the soccer ministry based out of Charlotte now. And so Uncharted Waters came out of that experience, and I was involved in going to Summit and with CSRM for many years. And then and actually Greg came to my church in 1992, I think, is the year that we came and did this with First Presbyterian and Barb Wagenfuhr and others. And so it's a long time longtime friend and longtime relationship that actually played into, I believe, how this came about, how Reach came about. Greg carried the banner quite heavily on his own, and the rest of us were sort of trying to help him a little bit. And then at some point, God said, no, these guys need to be deep in, not just their friend, Greg's friend. And so we started to meet and had these wrestling matches, 3 people wrestling at the same time. So not an easy thing to figure out who the winner was. But the fact is that we knew that God had used us in different ways, but in this common way of being in that event that happened in a year's time, once a year, and you come together, and the fledgling part of the sports ministry movement. All 3 of us on this call have been a part of the fledgling, a part of the teenage years, now heading for these older years, the golden years. And so the organizations that become part of us as we move along, and how the names change. Bob knows how to change the name of an organization pretty good. He's like really good at it. I only go with a couple moves. Bob's got multiple moves, so but no, UW was uncharted waters. And then I had a little boat as a logo, and people thought I was a sailing ministry. And so I said, no, I think we better change that. And we took the U and the W, and we made UW Sports Ministry. And so our job in UW Sports Ministry, and it's been a wonderful journey, about 24 years. And then I was able to hand it off. And now we have a new president, and he's doing a great job. And he lives in Lynchburg, Virginia, and I still live here. And I don't have to worry about budgets and board members and a few other things, man. This is like, I got out of prison. It was amazing. And so anyways, but maybe a few inmates here that you're meeting with, we can rejuvenate something. And so uwsportsministry.org is our website. And our vision is to zero in on the church, give them and equip them in disciple making, starting with children and moving on through teenage. And now I believe that the UW will have an amazing run under Corey, that the church can now make the link from the field to the pew, because that's the pieces that are all now starting to get into place over 25 years. And so excited for UW to be able to now draw the picture all the way from a camper to a life group member in a church and being discipled. And so it's pretty exciting times, actually. But thanks for asking, and I'll stop now.
No, it's good, Tim. We really appreciate you giving some background there on yourself and your involvement with Reach. And I love what you said. Is something that we talk a lot about at CSRM, moving people from the field to the sanctuary, or some sort of sporting event into our sanctuary, and then into a life group. That's what we're all about. And that's what Reach is all about, is to equip sports ministers to think things like that through. Dr. Greg Linville, I remember in the early 2000s, I was a graduate student sitting under your leadership. And I remember going to the CSRM Summit. There was one in Memphis, Tennessee, one in Canton, Ohio, because I know First Friends hosted it. And the church I was at, the sports minister I was working for in Canton, we hosted a dinner or something. And so I saw some involvement there. And then I remember driving a van load of college students. I think we borrowed my church's van to Atlanta, Georgia. And so I had a couple of those summits under my belt. I benefited greatly when I was a local church sports minister. But tell us how this kind of has moved into a partnership with other like-minded sports ministry or organizations, like we just heard with Tim and Bob, into the REACHGathering, and what that's all about, and your involvement with that as well.
Thanks, Dan. And it's great to be with these guys. Obviously, we do have some great affinities and stories that we can tell, being in Egypt together and being in a lot of different places together. In some ways, I think Reach is about even what's what's happened between us, between the three of us, because there were days that we didn't want to talk to each other, or things that were troubling amongst us. And Reach has, as Bob had said earlier, has really enabled us to work together in ways that we should have been doing all along. And I think it really is a model for the extended sports outreach community. And in some ways, unfortunately, Reach came about in this way, that there were a couple of other paraministries that were out there, and they came to CSRM because we had done the Sports Outreach Summit unilaterally by ourselves for about 20 years. And they came to us and said, why don't you do this together? And so we planned it. And the other groups that planned to do it with us, they bailed out within like 60 days of it happening. And at that point, I still remember Tim was a little sheepish, and he said, "Well, did you ever think about me or Schindler?" And I said, "Well, it's not that we ever wanted to exclude, it's that these other two groups came to us and we said, yeah, but it seemed like it was right." And so then when these two brothers came and said, "We're willing to do this too." And that's, in some ways, it's a living metaphor of what happens at Reach every year. That as people come from these maybe diverse or different backgrounds, and they can lay down the stuff that they're into and then join together and make it happen. And thank God, because what has happened has been better. And Dan, you know this, that there are a lot of people said, you guys at CSRM, you're crazy, because that was your centerpiece. That was what people saw you as, the people that did that. Well, but what's right for the church? It's not what's right for CSRM. And I think that's the same that both Tim and Bob say. It's not right for Cedar or UW. It's right for the entire church, and that's what we're trying to do. I don't know, Tim or Bob, you have reflections to what I just said or other memories about that?
Yeah, because I think, Greg, I think one of the things that that the joining of us does to put on this is it causes us in a very good way to constantly be thinking about not just our ministry, but the bigger movement.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always very healthy for me, because I can get pretty truncated in my thinking and get pretty territorial, or, all limited in where I'm seeing the bigger body of Christ. And so every time I get back up and we start talking about Reach, and we say, look, this is a unified effort. This isn't any one particular ministry's efforts. This is a part of a bigger thing than us. It just breathes really good kingdom air into my lungs, I feel like. So that's one of the things that I really benefit from it, is it just gets me thinking beyond myself and rejoicing in a great God who's doing these kind of things all around the world.
Tim,
absolutely. Amen to that.
Yeah. Tim, would you add anything to what Bob shared?
No, it's just again, the uniqueness of what CSRM and Reach do is laser focus on the church. Yeah. And the movement of sports ministry has had a massive history of parachurch thinking and a bigger, bigger kingdom thinking maybe, and attempting things that are in a larger scale, production and that kind of thing. And but what I think that was common in the three of us was Mr. and Mrs. and their kids that sit in the pew, and how's this gonna help them,
right?
And it's just gonna help the teenage kid that is never gonna get a scholarship, but he loves to play, and so there's a common man feel, I believe, that's here in Reach that is not existent anywhere else that I know of, and so that's why I always continue to call them my friends. And even when I had to leave for a little bit, friends are still friends.
And so, Dan, I know that we've got some limitations on time, and you'll probably carry this over for a session or two. But I think one of the things that people need to realize is I really feel like this was historic in the sense that the three of us had never worked together to this level, at least. And the paraministries that we were leading, people would probably have laughed if they'd said, "Oh yeah, we're working together." I'd say, "No, you're not." I had one sports minister at a very prominent church come to me and say, "Hey, look, I don't know why you guys can't get together." And he said, I see, CSRM as my father, and it was then Church Sports Outreach, now Seed, was my mother, and Uncharted Waters was an uncle, and I come to my family dinner, and you guys don't even talk to each other, and I'm part of a dysfunctional family. That's what he said. I'm part of a dysfunctional family. Can you guys start functioning together? Well, we have, and we continue to.
Yeah.
And that's the power of reach, in my opinion.
And that's a win for the kingdom.
Absolutely.
Right.
We know we're better together. And that's true when churches work together. It's true when like-minded ministry organizations like these three right here, when we're working together, we know it's going to go further for the kingdom. Unfortunately, we are out of time for this session. We just pray that you'll join us for the next session as we continue to have our reflections about Reach. And we want to remind you, you can register for the Reach Gathering. It's March 28th and 29th. And I'm going to say it, 2023. It sounds weird to say that, but it's right upon us. And register for that right now. Go to reachgathering.org to find out some more information about that. Register, bring others with you. If you've never come, we encourage you, check out the website, talk to your leadership, and come and be encouraged. And so we hope you'll join us next time as we continue to reflect upon Reach. Thank you so much for today, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.
The CSRM podcast is a production of CSRM and their production house, Overwhelming Victory. Dr. Craig Linville is the executive producer, and Scott Stedman is the associate producer and editor. To learn more about CSRM, visit csrm.org. For more information about Overwhelming Victory, visit overwhelmingvictory.org. The CSRM podcast is the flagship member of the podcast network Overwhelming Victory Radio. For more information on Overwhelming Victory Radio, or to listen to our partner podcasts, visit overwhelmingvictory.org/OV Radio. For CSRM Podcasts, I'm Mike Maloney. Have a blessed day.